This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, this is Maureen Bogey.
And this is Dylan Hackworth.
And you are listening to the Creep Street Podcast. Whoa. Dylan, you all right there?
Oh, I'm feeling good now that I'm on Creep Street, baby.
Oh, come on. Okay, we're here. We're having fun. We're ready to have a good time. This is a live, laugh, love situation here. Big time. Live, laugh, love, dance, breathe, enjoy.
Absolutely.
We love to see it, and we love to hear it, and we love to be it. And that's just, kind of where we are right now. But here's the deal. Okay, if you want to be kept up on what we're doing in the Creep Street world.
You want to know. If you got to know, you got to know.
Right, and that's fair. You can follow us on all sorts of social media. You know what I mean? We are at Creep Street Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, Creep Street Pod on Twitter. We're also on TikTok.
Yes, we are.
Creep Street Podcast, okay? Now, on our Facebook, to go back to the Facebook for a second, okay, we have a subgroup called Citizens of the Milky Way. It's just a little forum where anyone can post articles, memes, funny stories, questions, reviews, anything like that, and we'll post on there sometimes, and on there we'll also reveal what our episode is going to be that week a little bit early.
Yeah.
And it's just a good place for fun. So check that out. It's Citizens of the Milky Way. Now, we've been told, okay. Like, I'm not making this up. Like, people have said this.
Yes.
So don't at me. People are telling us that one episode a week is not enough.
Nope.
Not enough content. But here's the thing. We have your back. We've thought of you. We've come up with a solution. It is at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. Okay, and there we have all sorts of bonus content. Okay, we're talking interviews. We're talking short stories, movie reviews, movie commentaries. Other little fun stuff, little surprises here and there. We also have full bonus episodes.
Yes.
All sorts of stuff. And we've got 3 tiers, okay? We've got a $2 tier, a $5 tier, and a $10 tier. And no matter your friggin' budget, we have got you covered.
Yes.
And it's just a blast, and we would love to just have you with us. So once again, you can check that out at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. Also, please like, rate, subscribe, tell a friend about the cast, post about us on social media. All these little things, we appreciate it so much to spread the good word of Creep Street. Now, Dylan, what do we have cooking here today?
Oh, let me tell you something. Mama's cooking up something real good.
Okay, let's hear it.
Folks, today we are talking about Encounters with the Goatmen.
Whoa.
Yep. Oh my gosh. And let me tell you, let me just butter this cracker with my sources here.
Okay. Kind of a weird thing to say, I'll be honest, but I'm into it.
I read a book called Goatman, Flesh or Folklore by J. Nathan Couch. And what's interesting is, this was a while ago, but J. Nathan Couch was actually a guest on the Blurry Photos podcast.
Oh, yes.
So that was actually how I first heard about this whole phenomenon.
Oh, very cool.
And a video called The Goatman of Demon Hill, a true and terrifying encounter in rural England by the paranormal scholar.
Fantastique.
All right, Maureen. Well, this is kind of hard to explain because I always thought there was the Goatman.
Okay.
Turns out there's many Goatmen.
Oh, okay. So it's not the Goatman, it's truly Goatman.
There are truly many places have their own Goatman story.
That's weird, but also maybe makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
So we're going to start off in the great state of Maryland. And as I said, just to be clear, there's really no way to determine where the original Goatman legend comes from. But if we had to give an origin to the modern Goatman, it might be either in Maryland or Texas. We'll talk about a Texas tale after this one.
Okay.
But one of the top contenders would definitely be the demonic Goatman of Prince George's County, Maryland. In fact, the Goatman of Maryland is perhaps the most famous Goatman legend there is. It has inspired countless documentaries, paranormal shows, and even comic books. The legend reached its peak during the early 1970s, and in the years prior, numerous legends have begun to circulate that something was stalking the woods surrounding the small rural town of Bowie and along Fletcherton Road, just outside Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Strangely enough, the most commonly accepted origin for the Maryland Goatman involves the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Okay, here we go.
Specifically at a facility called the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, or BARC for short. The facility itself sits about 10 miles northwest of the town of Bowie, where it sits on nearly 6,500 acres of land. It's said that a scientist at the BARC facility was doing strange tests on goats. Some say they were trying to find a cure for cancer, while others say they were attempting to find the secret to eternal youth. Regardless of their motives, the legend maintains that the experiment was botched, and they found themselves with some sort of abomination of a creature. This creature is believed to have escaped from the facility and taken up residence in the surrounding forest. Some even say that the scientist was actually experimenting on himself and that he became the Goatman of Maryland. Now, the idea of a mad scientist creating some inhuman creature with an experiment gone wrong may sound silly, but when you consider the history of the BARC facility, you can't really blame the locals for being suspicious. When looking at the USDA history page on the USDA website, it says that several new breeds of cattle were actually developed there. It also states that in the 1920s that a, quote, meat-type hog was developed there. Essentially, this was a pig that developed more pork without needing extra feed.
Oh, God.
Likewise, they also apparently created new breeds of chickens that lay bigger and better-shaped eggs. But they were apparently most prolific with turkeys.
Oh.
In the 1930s, the BARC facility created a new breed of smaller yet meatier turkeys that came to be known as the Beltsville small white turkey. Then in the 1950s, they apparently discovered that some female turkeys were able to reproduce without actually coming in contact with male turkeys.
What?
The official name for this is the spontaneous occurrence of parthenogenesis. So the BARC facility, essentially they created new strains of these turkeys that could do this at higher rates, that could self-procreate at higher rates. Now, while all this is super weird to think about, the source does make a point of emphasizing that the BARC facility has actually done things that have been very beneficial, such as preventing hog cholera and eradicating glanders disease. Both of these diseases were communicable to humans from animals.
Oh, damn, okay.
So they actually eradicated them. So some good things.
Okay.
There is also a second location nearby that is sometimes credited as the origin of the Goatman, and that is the abandoned Glendale Hospital campus, which sits on over 200 acres of land and consists of 23 buildings. It sits between Fletcherton and Lotsford Road. Both are locations of many Goatman sightings. The place was once a tuberculosis sanatorium and isolation hospital. Like the BARC facility, the legend is that the Goatman was created here from abominable experiments and then escaped into the surrounding forest. According to the legend, the Maryland Goatman's favorite prey is teenagers.
What?
And his weapon of choice? An axe.
Oh, come on.
But as you might expect, these legends have done very little to scare away the teenage population in the area. For many, summoning the courage to go to where the Goatman is said to lurk is a rite of passage. And there are a few places in Prince George's County that the Goatman is said to hang out. There is the Governor's Bridge, which crosses the Patuxent River on Governor Bridge Road. Another is a bridge on Tucker Road that's near Andrews Air Force Base. Some bloggers even say he lives in a rundown abandoned house that stands behind St. Mark the Evangelist School in Hyattsville. There are 2 legends in particular that are associated with Tucker Road that involve hermits. The first claims that a reclusive hermit once lived on Tucker Road where he kept a goat farm. One night, it said a group of asshole teenagers burned down the man's home and killed all of his goats. This awful act drove the man insane, and as the legend goes, nightly he dresses up in the furs of the dead goats and stalks the woods with an axe, searching for any teenagers who may be in the area. And sometimes he will simply throw rocks at cars driving by, trying to lure people into the dark woods to their fate. The second version of this legend maintains that the reclusive hermit was cursed by an enemy to have the head of a goat, and now he stalks the area. But there are also legends that tie the Goatman to satanic practices, and that a satanic cult in the area actually conjured the Goatman. As the legend goes, the devil himself apparently has a special liking for Prince George's County. And my source points out that there's an interesting connection here. It was in Prince George County, in the town of Mount Rainier, where an exorcism was held in 1949. This was one of many exorcisms that were part of a larger story, the story of Roland Doe.
Oh, okay. We've heard this before. Shout out to our Roland Doe episode.
Yes, as we know, would go on to inspire The Exorcist.
Mm-hmm.
And there was rumored to be an active satanic cult at the nearby University of Maryland College Park campus.
Ooh.
So it was actually the work of a Dr. Barry Pearson of the University of Maryland that can be thanked for what is known as the Goatman legend. In 1970, he began collecting and archiving Goatman stories for his folklore classes. The collection would come to be known as the University of Maryland Folklore Archives. The torch was then passed to a man named Mark Opsonick, who was an author and researcher. He grew up in the area and often went searching for the Goatman as a kid. Once he became an adult, Opsnick published numerous books about the strange legend from Maryland, and it's interesting how the Goatman is connected to other legends that you wouldn't even think it would be connected to, sort of like Roland Doe.
Right.
And there's various other cryptids and whatnot in the area that aren't Goatman related. Well, they might be Goatman related.
Mm-hmm.
In his research, he came across a story that perhaps was the first time the modern incarnation of the Goatman legend was printed in newspapers. On October 27th, 1971, the Goatman was mentioned alongside various ghost stories from the area, perhaps as a festive Halloween article.
Okay.
But after this mention, Goatman sightings suddenly took off. A couple weeks later, on November 10th, 1971, a gruesome story was published in the Prince County News about a slain puppy who may have fallen prey to the Goatman.
No.
In the Prince George town of Bowie, a teenager named April Edwards said that earlier in the week, on November 3rd, her and some friends began hearing strange noises coming from outside her home. When they went out to have a look, they claimed they saw the silhouette of a large bipedal creature walking through a nearby field. Shortly after this sighting, the family's new puppy Ginger went missing.
Oh no.
In a Washington Post article published on November 30th of that year, 1971, the terrible fate of the puppy was revealed. It said that after weeks of searching, April's cousins found the deceased remains of the poor puppy. It had been decapitated.
Oh my God.
Now, just to be clear, the puppy's remains were found near the train tracks that ran through the area. So obviously it's possible that the poor pup might have been hit by a train.
Mm-hmm. But still.
Yeah.
Whatever happened, that is very sad.
That same article also divulged further info. Apparently, April and her cousin Kathy and a group of their girlfriends claim they saw a goat-like creature hiding on top of a pickup truck. They couldn't really see it well in the dark, but suddenly the thing hopped off the truck and vanished into the woods.
Oh.
This would ignite what you might refer to as a flap, because many sightings began to pour in. The County News published an article on November 24th, 1971, that said a group of teens had caused a huge hiccup in traffic when they used their trucks to block off a stretch of Tucker Road. They were certain that they had spotted the creature and they had it cornered, but after searching the area, they found nothing. Another sighting came that same month along Zug Road, where some teens claimed they saw a goat-like bipedal creature running through the woods, squealing as it went. Now,
What is interesting is that later on in the mid to later 70s, there would be a rash of sightings reported in the area about a Bigfoot-like creature with glowing red eyes. Now, it's possible that this was just a totally different cryptid, but many speculate that what they actually saw was the Goatmen. Perhaps in the dark, this beastly bipedal figure might be mistaken for a Bigfoot-like creature instead of a goat one. Another possible origin for it all happened on the night of August 1st, 1957. A Mr. and Mrs. Garner were driving home that evening along Brown Station Road, about 15 miles south of Fletcherton Road. Suddenly, a large, hairy creature darted across the road. Mr. Gardner swerved to try and miss it, but still hit the creature before it ran off into the forest. In the brief moment it was there, Mrs. Gardner claims she saw that it also had glowing red eyes.
Ooh.
The very next night, their neighbor, a Mrs. H.L. Brady, was getting ready for bed when she was startled to see two red glowing eyes looking in at her through the bedroom window. She was terrified, of course, and Mr. Brady grabbed his shotgun and ran outside, firing a shot at the creature as it vanished into the forest. Mr. and Mrs. Brady were so frightened by the experience, they wouldn't even stay in their house after that. Within a week after that night, there had been over 200 sightings of a Bigfoot-like creature with glowing red eyes. Hunting parties and local authorities would comb over the area in the coming weeks, but find nothing. The media would go on to dub the creature the Abominable Phantom. On August 8th, though, Mr. and Mrs. Gardner came out to say that they think the beast they hit on the road was actually a large elderly chow that lived on a farm nearby. The hit did not kill the dog, but apparently it just started to have a limp, and they don't know if maybe it was because of that car. But you'd think a car, I don't know.
Yeah.
You'd think a car would do a little more damage, but I don't know.
Right.
But also, how would you mistake a chow?
Yeah, that's like kind of chows are,
Also, was it a fucking chow looking through Mrs. Brady's window?
Yeah,
You know
that's
what
just
I mean?
I don't know. Some people have issues with chows, okay? I think they look like little lions.
I think they're the cutest damn things.
And are they a chow expert, but gosh darn it, I don't think they're responsible for this.
Right, of course. Now, there's another possible origin for the modern-day incarnation of the Goatman legend that dates back centuries. Captain John Smith would actually write about a similar strange creature way back in the 17th century.
Oh.
He mentions what he calls an evil spirit that was worshipped by the local Piscataway and Powhatan tribes in the 1600s. Keep in mind, also, obviously, this is a pilgrim writing about the customs of the native population, so whatever practices they did, or often they're going to be painted in a negative light.
Yeah.
This is something we've seen throughout history, like when the Romans and the Celts, they made Celtic traditions seem barbaric and stuff.
Right.
So who knows what, you know what I mean. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, just, take it with a grain of salt.
But Smith said this evil spirit was called Oki.
Oh.
O-K-E-E, I think that's how it's pronounced, and that it was a shapeshifter. He claimed that the native population would paint the devil-like image of the Oki on their chests and carve images of it into trees and such. And the image of the Oki was often depicted in a way that was similar to our modern incarnation of Bigfoot. My sources say the Oki was often depicted as having a duality sort of quality. Ugly depictions of the Oki apparently represented its power over war and the afterlife. On the flip side, the Oki was often depicted as a handsome hunter, which symbolized power and domain over the animal population. It also states that the Powhatan tribe would often wear antlers during specific ceremonies. Obviously, this was most likely just a harmless religious practice, but obviously to the newly arrived Christian settlers from Europe, they probably saw it as some sort of a demonic thing, or even mistake them as demonic creatures
like
with
literally
their horns.
were these things,
right.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the point is, why I'm bringing this up is what's interesting is in other stories too, Bigfoot and the Goatman are often mixed up. People will say they thought they saw a Bigfoot or a Goatman when they saw the opposite. Yeah, it is pretty interesting.
It is kind of weird because a goat doesn't look like Bigfoot,
Right.
But I guess just you're seeing a large bipedal creature that you don't know, so it's just kind of easy to kind of get them mixed up in the moment because you're caught up in the moment. I don't know.
Right. Now, the book Weird Maryland mentions a strange encounter that happened in Prince George's County in the town of Summerfield near some off-base military housing. A few girls had gone off to play at a nearby creek before dinner. Their parents were worried when only one girl came back to the house for dinner, so the father went to find the other daughter, and he found her by the creek, huddled up and crying, pointing to the other side of the creek. It wasn't until the father had carried the girl all the way home that she could actually stop crying long enough to say what had happened. She said that she saw a goat-like creature rise up, standing on both its hind legs, and it was on the other side of the creek, and then it just nonchalantly walked off into the forest. The father crossed the creek to look for himself and claimed to have actually found sets of hoof prints that walked away from the creek.
Wow. Oof.
It's also possible that it could have just been a person mistaken as a goat man. One person in particular that lived in the area was a man named Dominic who worked as a trapper. He would often be dressed in fur while carrying tools with him, which probably included an axe, a hatchet. Given the nature of his work, he was often covered in mud and generally unkept. Also, as the years went by, the once rural area started to fill up with housing developments and businesses and whatnot, meaning there was less non-private land for Dominic to do his trapping on, so oftentimes folks would see him walking down the highway.
Oh.
And because of all the furs he wore, people often referred to him by the nickname the Coat Man.
Oh, come on.
So it's possible some of these sightings might have actually been Dominic.
I could see that.
But regardless, Goatman sightings in Prince George's County still happen frequently today. In August of 2000, Baltimore's ABC affiliate station reported that a group of construction workers were chased off of a work site by some huge creature. They claim it stood at a staggering height of 12 feet and that it left behind it 15-inch footprints.
Whoa.
Now, the station did report the creature as being Bigfoot-like, but Goatman enthusiasts will tell you that it was simply the Goatman being mistaken for another cryptid. While J. Nathan Couch was doing research for his book that I used as my main source, a woman named Barbara, who lives in Bowie, Maryland, sent him a letter in November of 2013, and this is what it said. We who have lived in Bowie most of our lives know all about the Goatman. Is he just folklore? I doubt it. He has been seen and heard late at night when the moon is full, and the remnants of his meals are found scattered throughout the woods, along High Bridge Road and other back roads here and there. His eyes are yellow, and he walks on 2 legs at a time. Oh yes, little children fear him. Bigger kids worship him because they fear that a lack of respect will bring the wrath of the Goatman down on them. Boo.
Thanks.
So there you go. That's Maryland, baby.
Whoa, you love to hear it.
Keep in mind, there are many Goatman tales.
Yeah.
And this will be one of those, kind of like Shadow People, where we'll be able to do a Goatman 2 in the future.
Hell yeah.
So next, let's head on down to the state of Texas.
Okay, whoa, Texas alert.
For this next Goatman legend, we are headed down to Texas, where something interesting my source points out is that there are a total of 254 counties in the state of Texas, and that nearly every one of them has some kind of a Goatman legend.
Oh, okay.
But the one we will cover here is perhaps the most famous of them. This particular legend is often referred to as the Lake Worth Monster, and it actually began a full year before the Maryland Goatman.
Oh, okay.
News of the first encounter with the Lake Worth Monster first hit the headlines on July 10th, 1969. Journalist Jim Mars published his article in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram entitled, "Fishy Man-Goat Terrifies Couples Parked at Lake Worth." It was shortly after midnight on July 10th, and Mr. and Mrs. Reichart were parked down by Lake Worth with 2 other couples. They're in their car enjoying themselves when all of a sudden a huge creature suddenly leapt out of the treetops, landing violently on the hood of their car. They were terrified. There on the hood of their car was some sort of a half-man, half-goat creature. And strangest of all, it appeared to have scales. The creature reached a clawed hand through the passenger side window, trying to grab a hold of Mrs. Reichart. Mr. Reichart put the car in gear and peeled out of there, and as he did, the creature leapt off of the car. The 3 couples sped away directly to the nearest police station and reported what had just happened. Down the side of their car was an 18-inch long scratch that looked like a claw mark. The police told them that they had actually been receiving similar reports in the days before, but just had brushed them off as pranks. The couples were so worked up that the police agreed to go out and have a look, and a team of 6 police returned to the scene with them. They searched the area but found no signs of any such creature. And once again, they dismissed it as just another prank. Well, prank or not, this would begin what was known in the area as the Summer of the Goatman. The next sighting of the Lake Worth monster would come the very next night, just after midnight on July 11th. A local man named Jack Harris had read the story of events in the prior night in the paper and set out that evening to see if he could catch a glimpse of the legendary Goatman himself. Jack spotted the creature as it was crossing the road that led into the Lake Worth Nature Center. There was also a group of about 20 to 30 people out that night also watching the creature. They also saw it walking up and down a nearby bluff.
Oh.
The group decided to try and approach the creature. As they got closer, the creature suddenly picked up a tire that had been disposed of. It had the rim on it and everything. And he threw it towards the crowd, a staggering distance of about 500 feet.
Oh my God.
The crowd scattered in terror. One of the witnesses in attendance was a man named Ronnie Armstrong. He got in his car and was so scared that he slammed into a tree as he was backing up the car. Later that evening, police came and investigated the area and were pretty much laughing in the face of the witnesses. When suddenly, there came an awful howling noise from the woods and the police scattered back to their cars and got the hell out of there. The witnesses who were present claimed that the creature must have weighed around 300 pounds, walked on two legs, and had a whitish gray fur. And they described its howl as being pitiful, almost as if it were in pain. You may start to notice a trend here. The police thought perhaps it was a person in an ape suit. Why is there this constant mix-up between Bigfoot or ape-like creatures and goatmen?
Yeah, that's weird.
An article was published in the Star-Telegram on July 14th, a few days later, with a headline that reads, "Ghosts Seen on Greer Island." The island, Greer Island, actually sat within Lake Worth. It was in the lake. It was an island in the lake.
Yeah.
In this article, a man is interviewed who claimed to have encountered various misty apparitions as well as the Lake Worth monster on the island. Now, here's what's different about the Maryland monster. A lot of the Texas ones have more of a paranormal bent, whereas the one in Maryland was more of like science gone wrong sort of a thing. Well, because of all these reported sightings, bands of hunting parties started to form and comb over the area for weeks. During these hunting parties, tracks were discovered that measured 16 inches long and 8 inches wide. One of the hunters was a man named Jim Stevens, and he claimed that as he and a party were driving down the road, the creature leapt from the trees and landed hard on the top of his truck, causing them to lose control and crash into a tree. Only then did the animal hop off the truck and escape into the forest. Local sheep farmers, Mr. and Mrs. Bramble, reportedly found many of their sheep dead, with their necks having been broken by something very powerful. While they didn't actually see it happen, they heard an awful cry, and when they ran out to the field, they found the sheep freshly dead. They could still smell the goatman's odor lingering in the air. One hunter claimed to have shot the creature and then pursued it when it tried to flee. He followed it right to the banks of Lake Worth, where he says it then escaped to Greer Island. Is that where it resides? The only real photo we know of that was taken of the Goatman was by a local Lake Worth dress shop owner named Alan Plaster, and he was interviewed about it in an article published in the Star-Telegraph on June 8th, 2006. Alan claimed that he was driving one night along the lakeshore with his friend Kay when suddenly she spotted the creature by the road and shouted. Quickly pulling over, Alan was able to snap a blurry photo of the creature with his Polaroid camera. What's interesting is that Alan says he was suspicious at how the creature just suddenly appeared in a place perfect for a snapshot. In hindsight, he said he thinks that this was either someone in a costume attempting a hoax or that the Goatman wanted to be photographed.
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah. The last known sighting of this particular flap of the Lake Worth monster happened to a camper named Charles Buchanan. It was November 7th, 1969, and Charles was sleeping in a sleeping bag in the back of his pickup truck that was parked by the lakeshore. He was awakened suddenly in the middle of the night when the creature lifted him up into the air. He was terrified. How he managed to escape was he had a bag of leftover chicken nearby, and he grabbed it and threw it at the creature, which seemingly satisfied it long enough, and then it just simply walked into the lake in the direction of Greer Island. Well, as with most things like this legend has captured the fascination of teenagers in the generation since. Sometime during the 90s, a team named Doug Sheldon ventured up to Mount Nebu, where he was meeting friends to camp for the night. But before his friends arrived, he witnessed what he says was a monster standing almost 7 feet tall. It was furry and had a man-like body, but it also had horns protruding from its head. Doug obviously fled like mad, and as he did, he bumped into his friends who were on their way up the mountain to meet him. He took them back to the campsite, and they saw it too, silhouetted in the distance. And when it howled its awful howl, the teens fled back home. Nick Redfern and other paranormal investigators have even claimed to have found weird huts that were made on Greer Island, almost like it was somewhat intelligent and was making shelter.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, Maureen. Well, I got one more.
Let's get down and dirty with it.
Also, I just want to say, there's another very famous one from Texas. It's the Goatman's Bridge. I'm saving that because later this month, I'm doing an episode about 2 cursed bridges. One, Old Alton Bridge, which is said to be haunted by a goat man in Texas. But then also the Curse of Bunny Man Bridge.
Oh, whoa.
Something we've talked about on our Patreon, and we've even talked about it live at C2E2 here in Chicago.
We sure did.
But let me send you off with one more. This one from England.
Oh my gosh, across the pond.
Yes, now of course, half human, half goat creatures are not solely a phenomenon in the USA. Nearly every place in the world has various legends and stories of encounters. In fact, one happened exactly a year ago in February of 2022 in the English countryside.
Oh.
A couple was driving home to the village of Staverton, and they were driving through a little hamlet called Lower Shuckburgh that sits along the A425. That is when they saw something they immediately knew was not human. They posted their experience of all places on a website called Mumsnet, a place where parents can chat with other parents. Posting under the username Galloping High Road, here's what the original post says. We had been away for a few nights and traveled back quite late. Towards the end of our journey, this was about 2 a.m., we were driving along an A road in a rural area when something crossed the road in front of us in full headlights for about 3 seconds. It was about the height of a person, maybe 6 feet or over, but had short, powerful legs and hips which seemed to move in a circular, fluid fashion. It was not a deer because it stood on 2 legs. This was in the Midlands, and the area is traditional rolling fields and woodland. In this particular spot, there are no houses or buildings. Nearest is over a mile away. We drove back today, as it's only 7 miles from home, to look at the road and layout, and whatever it was moved into a wide bowl-shaped field dropping down to a stream. Any ideas? So interesting. So soon after, other commenters began posting saying that they had also seen strange things in the area. The population of this village, Lower Shuckburgh, is like less than 100 people. So when the couple drove through at 2 in the morning, it's not like there'd be a lot of people out, you know.
Right.
Others claim to have seen similar things in the fields that surround the area. One such poster mentioned a huge bipedal creature in a field. It walked upright and was hairy, but was thinner than a bear, with shoulders that seemed to droop. Its hands almost seemed to curl back towards its body, kind of like hooves do.
Right.
This user said they suddenly had this feeling of fear, but fear that seemed to be coming from someplace else, that was driving them away to get them the heck out of there, which is what they did. They put the pedal to the metal and sped away. This is also something common in ghost man sightings, and we've talked about it in other episodes like Shadow People and stuff, where you will fear an overly heightened sense of fear.
Right.
Maybe this entity is feeding off of it.
It, like, something about it makes you feel that scared. Like, obviously it is scary, just as it is. But it is scarier than even that. Like, it is causing you to extreme... Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Some interesting background about the village of Lower Shuckburgh. It has been around for centuries and was first mentioned in documents dating back to the 11th century. Its name, Shuckburgh, actually comes from the Old English Skeukaborg, meaning goblin or demon hill. We're not sure why the place was named that, but there have long been rumors and stories of supernatural happenings that happen there that go beyond just the Goatman. One person claimed they were on the road, driving down the road, when they encountered a big pale shape standing in the road. It was human in shape, but was indistinguishable. And as soon as their headlights hit it, the figure vanished. Nearby, another person reported driving down the road. It was about 5 a.m. They were headed to work at a nearby hospital. This was a nurse. When off to the side of the road, standing in a deep ditch, was a man. Because he was standing in a ditch, he was only visible from the shoulders up, but on his face, he wore an unnaturally big, sinister grin. What's interesting is that just moments before this, the woman claimed to have seen a string of lantern-like lights that moved in an almost slithering fashion along the hedges at the side of the road. So this whole area has weird stuff going on.
Yeah.
And of course, it goes without saying, half-human goat-like deities have been around since, like, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, Cernunnos from the ancient Celtic. This is all. Who's it from Midsummer Night's Dream? Puck? Mm-hmm. Puck is, I mean, this isn't new.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of covering these modern examples, but I cannot wait to tell you about goat. See, I've always wanted, and we've wrapped up this episode, but I've always wanted to do the Curse of the Bunny Man, but it was never long enough. So because I'm going to do Goatman's Bridge and Bunny Man Bridge together, it's going to be a Bridges episode.
That's kind of cool.
God, it's going to be freaky. Let me tell you something. It's a freaky story, gang.
Oh my gosh, so much to look forward to. But Dylan, thank you so much for doing all of that fantastic research. Yeah, that is also interesting, and like, it's so true that even like the devil is often portrayed as being maybe, a goat man person, Lucifer or whatever.
Yeah, and it's just, that just goes way back. The whole iconography of the goat and the lamb. Obviously, the lamb, especially in the biblical sense, has a very, symbolizes, it's usually the good stuff,
Right.
So yeah, it's long been, even before Judeo-Christian and the Abrahamic religions, there was goat shit. I mean...
And let me tell you, baby goats, you can't beat them. They're so cute.
They're cute little guys.
They're cute. What can I say? I like them.
Well, folks, I got a list of names I wouldn't mind jumping on the hood of my car.
Oh, okay.
Folks, give it up for these goats, a.k.a. greatest of all times.
Whoop, whoop.
Our top-tier Patreon subscribers, of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finnish Face Via Lundqvist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud Carl Staub, the Firestarter Heather Carter, the Conqueror Christopher Damian Damaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, the Serve Sexy Sam Hackworth, the Evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire Hernandez Lopez, the Maniacal Laura Maynard, the Vicious Karen Van Buren, the Arch Nemesis Aaron Bird, the Sadistic Sergio Castillo, the Rapscallion Ryan Crum, the Beast Benjamin Huang, the Devilish Chris Doucette, the Psycho Sam, the Electric Emily Zhang, the Ghoulish Gert Hankum, the Renegade Corey Ramos, the Crazed Carlos, the Antagonist Andrew Park, the Monstrous Michaela Schur, the Witchy Wonder J.P. Weimer, and the Freaky Ben Forsyth.
Wow. Wowzers. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much to our top tier Patreon subscribers. Damn it, do we love you.
Oh my God, do we ever.
And thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers. And thank you to all of you for listening. Once again, you can get that bonus content. You can get a shout out on the show and so many more wonderful things over at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. Please like, rate, subscribe, spread the good word of Creep Street, and we just love you.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
A good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.